Alright boys, welcome back to the channel. We're joined here today by yours truly and my dog. If he does make a bark or a squeaky toy, then he is just enjoying himself. What we're going to be talking about, as I'm sure you're aware, Gaijin is currently doing another sale at the minute. It's kind of bad. They've not really gave us all the full range of premium vehicles are not on sale. Probably will come at Christmas time. But because I'm sad enough to have purchased pretty much every single one of these, I'm not logged in, that's why everyone's here. But I can maybe give you some of the vehicles that I like that I bought them and some of the vehicles that I regret buying. So without further ado, let's crack straight into it. So the first vehicle we have is the Type 90B Fuji. This is absolutely worth £30 or $30, euros, whatever your local currency is. Fast firing gun, 4-second reload. It's got DM33, 3rd gen thermals, fantastic mobility. It is a little bit let down in terms of its survivability because it's got basically no armor, but it is certainly one of the most enjoyable vehicles in War Thunder and certainly in the Japanese tech tree. Moving on to the F4S Phantom, this is a plane that is carried purely by its avionics. It's got a pulse Doppler radar, it's got a helmet mounted display, it's got the AIM-7F Sparrows as well, which are very good in kind of short range engagements. I think the F4S is worth £30 if you are somewhat experienced at top tier. Top tier premiums, especially for realistic battles, are not really worth it if you're a brand new player because there's so many things, so many keybinds, so many tactics that you need to know. But if you're an experienced player, £30 it's an absolute bargain. Next up we have the M1 Heavy Common Clickbait. This has got the improved armor, I believe. I think it does anyway. It's not really a great vehicle, I'm not going to lie. It did get the upgraded M829A2 round, I believe, not so long ago. So in terms of firepower, you can't really criticise the Abrams. Where it is let down, though, is its survivability. It's nowhere near as survivable in-game as some of the Russian tanks. Now, this isn't really a problem on some of the more wider rural maps, such as Fulda and... I can't remember what the other one's called. The one with the really big green grasses where everyone snipes on. On those types of maps, this is a fantastic vehicle. But because so many of the new modern maps are all city maps, you just really can't hide this big turret chin here. And it's very, very easy to kill these things. If you're desperate to start the American tech tree grind, then it's not a bad investment. But if you, like, I've got every single tank pretty much in the game now. There wasn't really any purpose for me to buy it. I just bought it out of the sake of completionism, I guess. For 30 quid, it's not too bad. It's just not very enjoyable to play. That's all I'm going to say. Same with American top tier. America is good at... It's good at 5-3, 6-3, 7-0, 10-7, and then that's pretty much it, really. Top tier America isn't really the best. So after that little bit of a diatribe on the clickbait, let's go on to the Stridsvorden 121B Christian 2. This is basically just a copy and paste of the Leopard 2A4 from the German tech tree. It's limited in its gun because it only has DM23, which is a little bit underpowered at the battle rating of 10.7. Nevertheless, though, you'll have seen these vehicles absolutely spammed out. Basically, the 121B, the 2A4, and I think there's another one as well, some other tech tree. Very, very good all-round vehicles. First-gen thermals, fast. The armor is good enough where if someone rushes a shot, it's likely to bounce. But against an experienced player, your armor isn't really going to give them too much trouble. It's kind of like the Leopard 1 at a lower to higher battle rating, but it's got very good mobility, which you can use as a replacement for survivability if you're a good player. The gun's good enough to penetrate pretty much everyone. First gen thermals, got smoke grenades. The lineup's also very good at 10.7 for Sweden. You've got backups such as the CB9105 if you own it, as well as some of the other Stridsvorden 1940s, actually, sorry, 1940s. So very good vehicle. Same thing for the Leopard 2A4. Now, I'm not sure why this is £27.5 and this is 30 when it's exactly the same vehicle, just in different tech trees, even down to the same camouflage nets. But, yeah, both of these tanks are worth it. The German 10.7 lineup is a lot more flushed out. So if you just want one of these, or you're looking for a premium to grind Silver Lions, the German one is probably better if you've got more time to put into the plane. I'd say, though, that the Swedish and the German tech trees are both exceptionally good. There's not really... I'd buy both of them if you really want to. I own them both and use them quite a lot. Moving on to a tank which leaves quite a lot to be desired. To put it lightly, is the MacGyver Mark III Ram Segal. In real life, this basically has a laser warning system which is modelled in-game, but it doesn't actually do anything, so it doesn't actually help you in any way. But it does have a very good gun for its battle rating. I believe it's got over 500mm of penetration. The reload as well was also recently buffed down to about 5 seconds, I believe. So in terms of firepower, you are pretty much just as equal to the clickbait, but a much lower battle rating. The mobility, though, is terrible. The survivability is also terrible because you do not feature any sort of composite reactive armor or NERA. It's just kind of... it's just like steel armor from World War II, basically. It doesn't really do anything other than that frontally mounted engine. For 30 quid, if you're desperate to get started in the Israeli Tetri, then go ahead, but it's not really one of those tanks that you buy to have fun with. It's kind of basically allowing you to skip the terrible Israeli tanks in the mid-tiers. A plane I would absolutely not recommend is the Su-39. This is very, very slow. I believe it only gets the R60M and the R73s, which are a little bit dated. This thing faces planes with active radar homing missiles. This is because it does have some pretty advanced air-to-ground weapons, but it is a very slow plane. At top tier ground, you do have things like the Su-24, and we're soon going to be getting the Su-34 as well, which are both supersonic, carry more... well, they carry more advanced weapons, but they don't carry as many, if that makes sense. But because this is quite a slow plane, you're just going to get shot out of the sky, both in air realistic and ground realistic. Moving on to the cornerstone, or the old cornerstone of the Soviet grind, is the T-72AV Terms. This is a Syrian T-72A, which was upgraded with the ERA, that is basically the V designation. That means ERA applied to the tank. You'd also get 3rd gen thermals for both the gunner and the commander, as well as 3BM42 for the main gun, making it a very potent tank, only really let down by its somewhat substandard protection and its rather terrible reverse speed. For the price of 28 quid, or about $30, 30 euros, well worth the pickup, especially if you combine it with the T-80UD or the 2S38 cancer machine. Then I have the Type 96A prototype pack. This sits at battle rating 10.0, which is a little bit of a funny lineup for the Chinese because you don't really have anything else to go with it. It's kind of been overshadowed now by the new Chinese premium, which sits at a rank higher, I think. I can't remember the name. It escapes me as I'm recording this. I'd probably avoid... it is a good vehicle, to be honest. It's got a high penetration round. It's got 3rd gen thermals. It's faster than the T-72 Terms. Got better armor as well. It just doesn't really have the same great lineup that the T-72 has. I wouldn't really recommend people go and rush out and get this because it's not really the best anymore. It does sit at a lower battle rating though. I think you can play at 10.0 where all these are at 10.7. So in the case of if you get a down tier, it is very, very powerful. I wouldn't really recommend it though. A plane that I would recommend, especially for both people that want to grind Chinese air and ground vehicles. Well, okay, let me rephrase that. The A5C is very good as a ground pounder in ground realistic, and it's very good for grinding the air tech tree as well. You get 2 very advanced Magic 1 missiles, I believe, or I think you can choose AIM-9Gs, either one of those 2, I believe. It also gets 4 500 kilo bombs on the center line, as well as, I believe, 16 very large air-to-ground rockets on the 2 inner wing pylons, making it very flexible for both bombing bases as well as CAS in ground realistic. The price of 25 quid, absolute bargain to get into the Chinese tech tree. Then move on to the Centauro RGO. This is the Royal... I'm sure it was the Royal Jordanian, but I don't think it is. It's some sort of Royal Guard anyway. It's basically a Centauro from the Italian tech tree that has been copy and pasted into a premium. It's a battle rating 11.3. It's a very good vehicle. I grinded quite a lot of the Italian tech tree with the tech tree Centauro RGO. For 30 quid, it's probably the best grinder in the Italian tech tree at the minute if you don't have the OF40 MTCA, which I don't think you can buy anymore. 30 quid though, it's a pretty decent investment. We then have the Saab J35XS pack. I wouldn't recommend this vehicle. It's got I think it's either got 6 or 12 countermeasures, which isn't a lot, as you can imagine. It used to be very, very fun because it had 6 AIM-9J missiles, which have largely been overshadowed at the minute. The plane is very agile, but it bleeds that speed incredibly quickly in a turn. So if you climb at the game, you've basically blown all that energy in 2 turns, which leaves you very slow. It's very hard to recover your energy. No other plane in the game really plays like it, so you kind of have to learn its playstyle. So it's not really the best plane for a newer player. So I would avoid the Saab J35XS. The Black Shark is criminally low priced. This thing should be like £1,000 just so no one buys the bastard things. These things used to be the terror of both ground realistic and simulator battles. You used to be able to spawn these at the start of a match with their full weapon loads. In-game, they are still very powerful. They have a 10-kilometer missile. The KA-50 doesn't get thermal optics, which isn't really that much of an issue in ground realistic because things don't really render other than tanks. So at long range, you can see people pretty easily. I wouldn't really recommend buying a premium helicopter to grind with. It's more one of those vehicles, do you want this instead of having to grind the Soviet helicopters? You can now just press that thing where it says grind, or you can use your tank RP to grind helicopters. That's probably better than buying this thing because playing helicopter matches are awful. So I wouldn't really recommend buying that. The A6 EM Tram, it's a vehicle that can take up to 4 AIM-9Ls into an air-realistic battle, I believe. But more realistically, it's going to be 1 or 2 AIM-9Ls, a gun, and then some air-to-ground ordnance. It's very flexible in ground realistic battles. You do get the skipjacks. I can't remember. I think it's AGM-123. Quite a funny name. Basically a rocket boosted air-to-ground laser-guided bomb. Very effective for CAS. But it's the same as the Su-39. It's very slow. Very easily to get shot out of the air by any sort of advanced air-to-ground... air-to-surface missile system. Especially with the OSA or the 9M33 coming in the next update. This thing is going to be absolutely stoned to death within seconds of spawning in. We then go on to the nuke machine itself, the T-29. This thing is an absolute must-buy for anyone that wants to play War Thunder, wants to get Silver Lions. Battle rating 7.0, fantastic 105mm gun. Very good APC-BC round as well. Workable armor, is quite weak on the turret mantlet there. The King Tigers can go straight through it. It's not really that hard for them to kill you. But decently fast for a heavy tank. Very good all-round gun. Well worth the $18 or $20. The F-104S is a plane that I've played quite a bit of, and I'm not really a huge fan of it. It does get 6 AIM-9Ps, I believe. It's pretty decent. It's not a plane that I enjoyed playing at all. I just don't really like the F-104S playstyle or any of the F-104s for that matter. I don't really like having so much speed where you can't really turn. I probably would stay away from this plane. The problem is though, there's no other really good grinder for the Italians because you have the AMX, which is subsonic, and then you have the Ariete as well, which is battle rating 9.3, I believe. So the TAF, if you want to be brain dead and just take off, bomb a base, and then try and get a kill, maybe you should buy this, but I don't really like bombing bases. I like fighting and learning how to play plane, and this is, personally speaking, I don't like this. Maybe it's good for you, I don't know. I can't really give my opinion. The M1 KVT, it's one of the 10.7, battle rating 10.7 lineups now for the Americans. The KVT only has M774, which is a little bit anemic at 10.7. The Abrams itself is pretty fast. The survivability is pretty bad compared to a lot of the things that you're going to be facing. Again, like the KVT, like the M1A1 Heavy Common, the clickbait, you have this massive weak spot on the turret ring. But for 28 quid, I think it's a good pickup. I think it's better playing 10.7 America than it is playing 11.7 now, or whatever it is, or 11.3, whatever the clickbait is now. You probably are better getting the KVT rather than the clickbait. Moving on to the F4EJ Phantom. This only has AIM-7Es, I believe. It doesn't have the AIM-7E2 dogfight. that is a bit of a problem really, because the F4E at the minute is one of the best planes in War Thunder. You got those fantastic dogfight missiles where if basically anyone is flying above you, you can lock them with your radar, and it's basically a guaranteed kill because that missile is so agile. The AIM-7E is decent, but it's basically designed to shoot down non-maneuvering large bombers basically, which just isn't really something that we get in War Thunder. So instead, most people just use the F4E as a missile and bomb truck, and he just flies in bomber base at the start of a match. You get the internally mounted gun though, which is good. You do get AIM-9Gs, I believe. I can't really remember. If you're looking to grind out the Japanese Tetri, then by all means, it's better than playing the most of the Japanese Tetri is god-awful, especially the jets. So ranks 5 and 6, I think. Absolutely awful to grind through. I think I just GE'd them, to be honest, because it was so bad. So for 30 quid, you get to skip that grind. You get a decent base bomber at the start of a match. Pretty brain dead playstyle though. Probably not even worth taking the Sparrows. No one really climbs high anymore, so you have to get real close to the deck. Then have the Apache A. Wouldn't really recommend this again because of the same as the Black Shark. Just tick that little box that allows you to grind helicopters with tanks. We then have the T-55AM-1. This is a fantastic vehicle. Basically a modernization of a T-55 with the Ilyich Eyebrow Pack, sorry, if I can speak correctly. These are the little things that you can see basically on the turret, as well as on the upper hull. This makes you pretty much immune to any of the early Heatfest and Sable rounds, meaning it is very hard for enemies to kill you if you stay hull down. And yeah, it's basically a bully at 8.7. You get a down tier to like 7.7. You've got a very high penetrating anti-tank guided missile fired from your barrel. You've also got the freebie M25 Sable round, which is very, very powerful. And I feel, bloody hell, I'm in a stutter today. You do also have that BR-412D shell, or the Soviet AP, I think it's BR-472, something like that. Very good APC-BC round. You can basically penetrate light vehicles like the Leopards and basically just blow them up in a single hit. So very, very good vehicle. Then move on to the F4J. Now, in the British Tetri, you've got the FGR2, which is like a British-made version of the Phantom with, well, I believe it's using British engines. The F4J is basically an older airframe that Britain bought off the American Navy. So it uses the American engines, so it's not as powerful as the British Phantoms in terms of its engine output. It also doesn't get an internally mounted gun, which means it's quite draggy. It does get the dogfight missiles, but this is battle rating 12.0, whereas something like the F4EJ Phantom 2 in the Japanese Tetri is 11.3. This means you face 13.0s like the F16 and the MiG-29s all day long, and you basically get shot on. So not really worth it. An absolute must-buy for any Brit-bongs is a Wyvern. That is how you pronounce it. It's not Wyvern, it's Wyvern. But anyway, I usually say Wyvern anyway if it sounds cooler. So it's 13 quid, just buy it. It's a very, very fast plane, over 600 kilometers per hour on the deck, or at least something like that. You get 1,200 rounds for your 4 20mm cannons. It's very fast. It's got good torpedo, good bombs, good rockets, absolutely everything you could ever want in a plane, apart from it cannot turn. Apart from that, go on to the Leopard. This is the Leopard A1A1 L44. Now, it does only have the DM13 APFSDS, which is a very early penetrator. This means it's not really got the best spalling, not really got the best angled penetration, but it's a 120mm gun on a Leopard 1 chassis. It's got thermal images as well. It's not really worth it. I'd just go and get the Leopard 2A4 in my opinion, but if you don't have this tank and you want it for some sort of completionist sake, or just to say you have it, then it's a nice little pickup. Same with the XM1. This is 9.3. It's got thermal images. It doesn't have any smoke grenades, which Americans always seem to really see as an issue, but I don't really see a problem with it. Just don't drive out round corners and get shot. It does have composite armor for the turret, but the hull armor is just spaced, I believe. So the survivability isn't really that good. But you do get a very high mobility, fast firing 105mm gun. You do only get the M735 round, which is pretty dog shit at this battle rating. But for 9.3, it's a pretty decent vehicle. For 25 quid, probably better getting the KVT and then the clickbait before I'd get the XM1. But if you don't have the XM1 and for some reason you really want it, now's the time for you to get it. TU1 pack, not really worth it whatsoever. I believe this can just carry quite a high bomb load, but there are much better options in the Soviet Tetri. This is one of the vehicles that I do not own, because pretty much every single person I've spoke to this about has basically said no, it's a waste of time. I think it gets 4 45mm guns or something stupid. Not particularly worth it in my opinion. Then have the now, Americans would pronounce that Kansas, but this is Arkansas, not Arkansas. I don't know. Americans, your naming is really, really strange. So the Arkansas pack, I don't own this either. I think it's got 12-inch guns, which aren't really that good at 6.3 or 6.7. I can't remember what battle rating this is. The American battleships aren't really very good until you get up to like the class. I can't remember the class. It's the class that got 16-inch guns before. The Iowas, the ones before. All the standards are pretty doo-doo in game. So I wouldn't really rush out and buy that, but I guess if you want to grind the American Tetri, you can do. I'd stick to just the destroys though. They're much more fun, much more profitable, and less likely to want to throw your PC out the window. Then have the D13. I believe this was the one that is tuned for very high altitude. It's got 3 20mm cannons with those fantastic manga shot rounds. Very, very lethal. Surprisingly good in ground realistic as well, because you can carry a 500 kilo bomb as well as 4 50 kilo bombs on the wings, I think. So very, very good all-rounder. You're probably better looking at someone who mains realistic though for a full in-depth realistic review, because I've not played mid-tier props in quite a while. But for 13 quid, I'd say it's well worth it. I used to play this quite a lot back in like 2015 or whenever this thing came out. I used to bum this to get the German points. So yeah, I would recommend this. Our last vehicle, the Object 120. I don't really have the best reputation of this vehicle. It's absolutely massive. It's got a very high penetration gun, but it sits at kind of an awkward battle rating. It has no survivability to speak of whatsoever. It's got a very high penetrating sable round though, which means it is up tier proof, but you are limited by your poor gun depression, average mobility, lack of rangefinder. You don't really need a rangefinder because it's literally so high velocity, you just point and click. If you don't have it, and then for 20 quid, it's good to get it if you're a collector, but if you're going to grind the Soviet Tetri, then the T55 is better. The T72AV Terms is better. You also have the new premium that they just added, the T80UE1, which is full price at the minute. If we go into War Thunder page, hopefully it's here so I don't look like a silly person. No, where is it? Here it is. T80UE1. I'd probably buy that over the Terran. It's a much better premium. Anyway, boys, this was a little bit of ramble. I'll try and put some background video footage over the back of this so it's not as bland. Anyway, lads, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you've learned a little bit of knowledge from this thing, and I'll see you, as always, in the next video.